Let's dive into an ancient story that, believe it or not, has some seriously modern lessons. It all kicks off with the whole nation at a huge crossroads, the moment they have to leave Mount Sinai.
Okay, I want you to just picture this for a second. You've spent an entire year at the base of this massive mountain. You're technically free from slavery, but you're not really free yet. And now it's time to move. The catch? Your final destination, this promised land, is on the other side of a brutal, unforgiving wilderness.
And that, right there, is the core problem. I mean, this isn't just a couple of families going on a weekend camping trip. We are talking about 2 million people, a population the size of a major city today. You've got men, women, kids, all their livestock. So the big question is, how on earth do you lead that many people through a place like that?
Well, the answer is this really fascinating mix of spiritual purpose and honestly almost military-level organization. So let's break down exactly how you get a nation like this on the move.
So right before they pack up and leave, they do something absolutely critical. They celebrate the second Passover. And you should think of this as less of a holiday and more like a company-wide mission statement. It was this powerful way to remind every single person, hey, remember why we're doing this? It was all about celebrating their newfound freedom and getting everyone on the same page.
But look, having a shared purpose is great, but it's not going to find you water in the desert or tell you which way to go. They needed real, practical, foolproof systems just to survive. And the solutions they came up with? Absolutely ingenious.
So how did they navigate? Forget maps, forget arguing about directions. Their GPS was a single, supernatural pillar. That's it. If the pillar moved, they moved. If it stopped, they stopped. It was this giant, unmistakable 24/7 guide that just took all the guesswork out of the equation.
And you have to appreciate the design here. It's brilliant. This thing wasn't just a cosmic signpost. It was a survival kit. During the day, it was a massive cloud, giving them life-saving shade from that blistering desert sun. But then, at night, poof, it transforms into a pillar of fire, giving them light and warmth against the cold. So it's not just a guide, it's also a guardian.
But how do you communicate with a crowd that big? You can't just yell, right? The solution, 2 silver trumpets. Think of it like a divine PA system. Different sounds meant different things. Time to march. Okay, everybody halt. This tribe moves out first. It was an incredibly efficient way to coordinate millions, and for them, that sound was literally the voice of God giving directions.
All right, so they've got their mission statement, they've got their divine GPS and their communication system, everything's in place. And so the Great March begins. And you can just imagine the feeling in the air, right? It's all order, faith, and this incredible sense of hope.
And it's really important to get this. This wasn't some rushed, panicked escape. They were at Mount Sinai for almost a full year, 11 months and 5 days to be exact. They were getting organized, receiving their laws, even building the tabernacle, their central place of worship. This was a very deliberate, carefully planned move.
And this prayer from Moses, man, it just perfectly captures that feeling at the start. As the Ark of the Covenant, which for them was like the physical presence of God, starts to move, he says this. There was this real sense of divine mission. They were marching forward, full of faith, ready to take on anything.
But all that powerful optimism, yeah, it turned out to be incredibly fragile. It only took 3 days. 3 days of marching for the harsh reality of the desert to sink in. And suddenly, you start to see the first cracks in their morale. Talk about whiplash. Just a few days after Moses is praying about scattering their enemies, what are the people focused on? Not God's power, but their own stomachs. They actually start getting nostalgic for slavery. Hey, remember the fish we got for free in Egypt? And they're complaining about the manna, the miracle food that's literally keeping them from starving. Their whole perspective just flips on its head. So you gotta ask, why did their attitude turn so bad so fast? Well, the text points to a few things. First, just plain old impatience. Second, this really dangerous nostalgia, where they started to prefer the so-called security of being a slave over the real challenges of being free. And third, there were other groups who tagged along on the Exodus who didn't share the same faith, and they were basically stirring the pot and causing trouble. And listen, these were not just innocent little grumbles. The text calls them wicked complaints. And the response? It was fast and it was terrifying. A supernatural fire just erupts at the edge of the camp. It was such a powerful warning shot that they literally named the place Taberah, which means burning.
So you've got the people complaining, then this divine punishment,
and the whole thing snowballs into a major crisis that goes right to the top. It ends up pushing Moses, their leader, to his absolute breaking point.
And this is where you see the pressure just crush Moses. He's totally overwhelmed by everyone demanding meat, and he actually turns to God and questions him, basically saying, there's no way we can feed all these people. I mean, when your leader starts to doubt, you know things are bad, really bad.
But God's first move here is interesting. It's not more fire, it's a practical, structural solution to the leadership problem. He basically tells Moses, you need to delegate. So Moses appoints 70 elders, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon them, and they start to prophesy. This does two things. It takes a huge weight off Moses' shoulders, and it's a very public, very powerful endorsement of these new leaders.
Okay, so the leadership team is now reinforced, but there's still the matter of the people's demand for meat. And they were about to get exactly what they asked for, but it was going to come with a horrifying price tag.
So first, the craving. Then, in response, this incredible wind blows a huge flock of quail right into the camp. But what happens next isn't gratitude. It's a feeding frenzy of pure greed. People are hoarding these birds for 2 solid days. And that greed, that's what triggers it. A terrible plague rips through the camp, and it's directly tied to that out-of-control desire.
The lesson here was brutal, and you can bet it was unforgettable. This story isn't really about being hungry. It's a powerful warning about what happens when desire goes completely unchecked. They got exactly what they screamed for, and their own attitude turned it into a deadly curse.
And this gives us a really key insight into the God of this story. This isn't some distant clockmaker God who is totally indifferent. No, this is a God who is deeply involved, deeply relational, a God who has emotions, who gets angry, but who also shows mercy and communicates directly with people, for better and sometimes for worse.
So all of this leaves us with a pretty big question, right? What does this 3,000-year-old story about a trek through the desert really tell us about the timeless challenges we all face? Things like leadership, faith, and that powerful, sometimes dangerous force of human desire. It turns out a story this old might have more to say about our world today than we think.